Let's talk about the toughest schedules to either open up the season or end the season. And Bodo is given a shot to his Steelers.
Bodo's 100% correct.
Yeah, I'll start with Mike, because I know that you had brought up the Steelers. Is that what you want to talk about, or do you have another team in mind?
I mean, yeah, I have a few backups here, but the Steelers were the main one. It's not even just the last few weeks, guys. The Steelers are getting shitted on all year with this schedule. It's like Mike Tomlin told the league, like, I'm never going to lose this winning season streak. And then Roger Goodell and the schedule maker said, hold my beer. Look at this. Look at this. I'm pulling it up right now so I could read some of this off. I have all the schedules saved in a file here somewhere. But yeah, the Steelers schedule is absolutely brutal. They obviously they're opening up the year in Kirk Cousins' first game with the Falcons, and they got the Chargers week 3, which is going to be interesting. Their D-line versus our new revamped O-line. Then you get into the middle of the season, and they have a stretch of games where it's Indy, Dallas, Vegas, and Vegas. I know you guys don't like the Jets, but I like the Jets. Go to the second half of the year. This is their last, 1, 2, 3, 4. Their last 8 weeks. Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland. That's the AFC North right there. If you lose those games, it's over. The Steelers are out. And then if they somehow survive that, they somehow make it through that and are still in the wild card picture or battling for the division, Philadelphia on the road, Baltimore, Kansas City, and then Cincinnati. And it's brutal. If the Steelers aren't undefeated by midseason, they're pretty defeated. And with Russell Wilson and possibly a Justin Fields situation here, it could get ugly, and I feel really bad for Fields. Because what if Russell Wilson fails, or God forbid something happens because he's Russell Wilson, he's been dealing with injuries his whole entire career. Now Justin Fields is getting thrown in there for that gauntlet to try and save his career. Ugh. I'd rather Fields just sit out. Let's bring Kenny Pickett back and feed him to these wolves so you can get a high draft pick next year.
Here's the thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't give a damn what their schedule is. I know. I looked at their schedule, brutal schedule. We all know that's a horrible schedule for them. But when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and you look at the last losing season by teams in the NFL, right? The Dolphins 2019, the Buffalo Bills 2018. This means more losses than wins in the season, right? Everybody else, their last losing season was 2000 till all the way to 2023. You know when the Steelers' last losing season was? 2003. 2003. 20 years ago. 20 years ago. And we're going to talk about, maybe the Steelers can't get past this brutal-ass schedule. I don't care how tough the schedule is. Steelers are going to find a way to be competitive, especially with Mike Tomlin over there. The NFL can throw whatever they want at them, but Mike Tomlin's going to come out at the end going, still here, still standing. What's up?
I tend to agree with that, especially because I think Cincinnati still has some offensive line concerns, and then you get in sort of T. Higgins territory, what's going on there. And then for the Cleveland side, we just don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. We don't know if he is going to sort of shake off the rust and be closer to the Deshaun Watson that they thought they were giving up all the money and all the draft picks to get. So I think that those games are tough because they're division games. But again, you're talking about a team that I think is going to have a really strong defense, and then this team is going to run the football better like we saw at the end of last season. So I tend to think the Steelers are still going to be a 10-11 win team. It's not a game I'm looking forward to, the Chargers traveling out there. So I do get what you're saying. I saw it too, Mike, and I was like, that is a brutal stretch of, you couldn't break it up with one game that's non-division, non-playoff team. It is a rough stretch.
Yeah. Their light weeks are go to Indy and play that playoff team from last year who now have freaking Cam Newton from 10 years ago in the pocket.
I think I have one that is to start the season that's more brutal than that even, but I'm going to let Joe go first to call out a schedule.
Well, okay, so here's my little notes at first. I had the Steelers with the horrible schedule. Chargers travel the most of any team this year, going 25,000 miles. The Raiders schedule that I like because I'm biased to the Raiders. The Raiders' schedule actually works out for them in terms of weather. They have to go to the East Coast 4 times: Cincinnati, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Miami. All of that before December, so that works out great for the Raiders in weather-wise. But here are 2 teams that I thought they have a couple stretches. They're the first 8 weeks, and this is for a team that not a lot of people are expecting a lot out of, is the Arizona Cardinals. For a team that wants to try to compete this year, their first 8 weeks are horrible. At Buffalo, the Rams, Detroit, Washington, San Francisco, Green Bay, Chargers, Miami. For a team that wants to get out of that basement, those first 8 weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks or 2 wins in there. That's very tough for an Arizona team, especially with when I'm looking at their defense going, who's that? Who's playing defense for them? And then the other team is Mike's team, the New York Jets. Their last 8 games, if the New York Jets are fighting for a playoff spot going into the last 8 games, they have Indianapolis, they have a bye week, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, Rams, Buffalo, Miami. So if they're looking for that last 8 games to certify them a playoff spot, it's going to be very tough for the New York Jets, especially with what's their backup quarterback name is?
Tim Boyle. Wait, I'd argue that.
I thought they signed Tyrod Taylor.
Oh, is it? That might actually work out. I'd argue you'd rather play Miami late in the year like that. And then again, you'd rather play the Jets probably too late in the year, but
yeah, I think that that is going to be an interesting season for the Jets, and I have my concerns. We'll get to more of that. The team I want to point out is a team that I think we have had high expectations for over the past couple of years. Definitely, we all predicted them to win the division. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. This coming into this season, I think is a real teetering point for Doug Peterson to sort of figure things out. I've had some questions about the moves. I know I'm not a GM, and so I don't have the credentials to question Trent Baalke. But if you look at the way that they messed with the Jaguars, so their first 3 of their first 4 games are on the road. They go to Miami, then come home against Cleveland, go to Buffalo, to Houston, and then come home for the game against the Colts. Then after that, go to London for 2 weeks. They're going to be at home for 2 of the first 7 weeks of the season. And I know that London is their home away from home type of a situation, but it's still not the best situation. Even though I do think they went 2-0 in those games last year, it's just a brutal way to start the season with all teams. Even the game against Indy, you say well, Anthony Richardson's unproven, but it's a division game that you have there at your place against a team that I think is pretty good, pretty physical, added Latu to that defensive line that I thought was pretty good last year, gets even better. So I look at this thing for the Jaguars. It's they could be headed into week 8, week 9. And it's what's the deal? It's 3-4 are the Jaguars. Is Doug Peterson on the hot seat middle of the year? Did they give Trevor Lawrence the contract? Is that starting to look like something people are debating or regretting, even though all of that conversation is always nonsense and ridiculous to me? I think that could be sort of the conversation for the Jags in a tough spot to really sort of surge forward, take that leap we thought they were going to take last year.
It's pretty wild. They somehow got the Jags going to London, but the Chargers still are traveling more. Jaguars. How is that even possible? And Bodo put it in the chat here. He's asking about 5 games outside the states being too many. And what about the poor people that work at concession stands? Do they get paid when the home game is taken away? First of all, I would like to see more international games, honestly. I want to see them go the other direction. If the Chargers got a game in Japan, I might consider coughing that up and going just to experience that. That would be pretty sick. I think they should go and try out some other countries like Australia, who just hosted a WWE event recently that went absolutely insane. And there's other countries that love sports and they just love the spectacle of the NFL being in town. And then the whole thing about poor people losing their pay. I mean, that's a part-time job. You shouldn't just be relying on concession work on the 8 home games each year.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to get into people's economical stances on this, but I will say that I'm not as big of a fan as the exporting of NFL games, because it does seem sort of greedy by the NFL to do these, to have teams in such a physical sport having to sacrifice and be far away. Like the Jaguars to be away for 2 weeks to me seems not great, even though you get the argument where it's like, oh, well, the second week they clearly have the advantage. It's like, we don't know that. That's only 1 week, or like one sort of sample size that we've seen of them staying over there for 2 weeks in a row, I believe. So what
if I pitched adding one more bye week to the season to make this possible, to where you get a bye week after you travel overseas like that?
Yeah, I'm in favor of a second bye week, even with a 17 game. If they go to 18, there absolutely needs to be a second bye week, because it just starts to feel unfair what we're asking these players to put themselves through. Uh-huh. And then, like, I know a lot of people say just stay off the internet, but just to go to the internet after one of these games, and you have people that can barely tie their shoes telling you that you suck. It's like, what's wrong with you people?
That's me, by the way. I can barely tie his shoes, Tony.
Bill Flames, I went Mike on the mic. Yep. What's up, the brand new one time for your mind? He gave you fair warning. Now it's time to smack him in the mouth with that raw sports talk from the town. Sweet chin music to your favorite sportscaster.